everybody? Welcome back to the Resleevables Visions Edition. I'm your host, Cedric Phillips at Cedric A. Phillips on all of the things. And I am, of course, joined by Patrick Sullivan at Basic Mountain on Twitter. Patrick, we are in the second set of Mirage block.
We talked on the last episode how Mirage was really the first full, complete block that set the architecture for the way that blocks got made for 20 years after the fact.
Yes.
Visions is an important second step in that process. One, because of the smaller set size. It set the stage for large set, small set, small set.
Yep.
And also set the stage for the second set is connected to the first set. I would argue Visions is too connected to Mirage.
Okay.
There's not enough new stuff going on, but it does feel like an extension of Mirage. So set size and mechanics makes it feel like part of a block as opposed to the sets around Ice Age, which maybe technically are a block, but feel pretty disconnected.
Yeah, technicality, as we've gone over in those episodes, they are part of a block. But as you mentioned, Visions is the first small set in a block that we've ever seen before, which means that naturally they're going to get some things right and they're going to get some things not so right, like you've spoken to.
Yeah. I think you still need to do new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to make it feel like a coherent thing. And it also lays the foundation for formats like Block Constructed and Booster Draft to feel coherent when the sets kind of share mechanics, and you can take a mechanic from Mirage and add to it so you aren't forced to put too much power level in any one given thing in the first set. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. I just think that Visions is a little short on the new stuff. Like, this could just be slammed into Mirage and no one would know the difference.
Well, we are going to learn more about Visions, Magic's first small set alongside a very big set. But in order for us to do that, we have to, of course, start with the facts of Visions. All right, everybody, we are here for the facts of Visions. But before we get there, as always, we must get to the facts of our sponsor, Tales of Adventure.
Thank you, as always, to our sponsor, Tales of Adventure. You can find their website over at toamagic.com, and also make sure to be following TOA Michael on Twitter. He regularly posts deals and sales throughout the course of the week, so you can use Twitter as well to find the best prices on cards. Tales of Adventure has a huge inventory of Magic cards, everything from Visions, if something from this video catches your eye. High-end cards are on the website, individually scanned, so you can find the condition and price that's best for you. Make sure to be using promo code Resleevables at checkout for 8% off of any order, and any order shipped inside the United States comes with free delivery and tracking. Tales of Adventure, Eternal lives here.
Wonderful job as always. Let us dive into the facts of Visions, and we will begin with the fact that Visions is the 10th Magic the Gathering expansion. It was released on February 3rd, 1997. And it contains 167 black bordered cards, 62 commons, 55 uncommons, and 50 rares. So, as stated right off the jump, a smaller set.
Yeah, this is setting, again, the foundation for the second and third set of the block is smaller. It's piggybacking off of some themes from the first set. It's ideally introducing some new stuff, but we don't really get to that part until Weatherlight.
And the set was actually advertised as an expansion to the standalone Mirage set as well. So they wanted to let players know that this was kind of a continuation of what you've just seen. Makes that very, very clear for everybody in the gaming space. Visions cards were sold in 15 card boosters. The boosters showcased the art from
Teferi's Puzzle Box.
Very well done. A booster box of Visions contained 36 booster packs, and Visions was the first set to have a wide dispersal of pre-releases. Wizards of the Coast started selling Visions cards and pre-constructed theme decks for Magic Online on April 10th, 2006. So this is really the first time we've kind of incorporated Magic Online onto the show. The cards became legal to use in several formats as they went on sale on Magic Online, and official release events were held on April 13th, 2006 on Magic Online because, of course, that program came out in the, I believe, early 2000s.
That sounds right.
If memory does serve, and you got to get those old cards on there somehow. So this was what they did to get them on there back in April of 2006, which was, that's me in college.
So I think the first set that was released live on Magic Online, I think was Odyssey Block, I want to say.
Okay.
Because I know they backfilled Invasion. You could draft Invasion even though it was not the most recent block.
Okay.
And for you Magic Online historians out there, because you actually had to put money in to get packs and then be able to draft and all this stuff, the rares from Apocalypse in particular were super expensive. Vindicates and Pernicious Deeds were, $100 a piece back in the day.
Jeez.
It's a different time.
Different time indeed.
I don't think those investments have held up. I think if you were long Pernicious Deed in 2002 on Magic Online, you're probably in trouble.
Yeah. But, it could rebound.
Yeah. This is all cyclical. You just got to wait.
Visions was the first set to introduce the color-appropriate text boxes to non-basic lands capable of producing single colors of mana, like Karoo, Everglades, and Jungle Basin. And that has been used for basic lands since the launch of Magic. So, non-basic lands capable of producing more than one color of mana did not receive color-appropriate text boxes until Invasion, except for the early dual lands, which had their weird, unique box-in-box color design that we've all seen before. Non-basic lands have a dual green text box, which they share with Vision's non-monocolor lands. The Vision's non-monocolor lands share the same dual green text box that Mirage has, and the monocolor lands still had text box frames of that same color. From 5th edition on, land text box color was standardized. So that's a mouthful of non-monocolor and monocolor and this and that, right? Basically, they did a lot of experimenting with the color of the text box of the lands, is the really short way to put it, and eventually standardized it in 5th edition.
Yeah, thank goodness.
I agree.
Gotta just put your pencils down at a certain point.
Yeah.
It also really didn't come through in Visions very effectively because there are very few lands in the set to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, if you're going to want to do some large change to the graphic design, the mana symbols, the color of the text boxes, whatever, you want to do it at a spot where it's really going to come through, where it's prevalent. Weird to do here with so few lands in the set. I would agree. So a bit of a word soup there, but it is factual, and that's what this part of the show that we're in right now. Vision's expansion symbol is the Triangle of War, a Zalfarin symbol inset with a V for Vision. So we've all seen that expansion symbol. And at the time of its release, Visions was the first in the release of quality cards at the common level. So let's dive into this a little bit. A couple of examples include Tabi Orangutan, Riverboa, and Fireblast. This is notable because these are like really good cards. Yes.
At that level. And I know you have some history with Riverboa. Mm-hmm. Far more than I do. Tabi Orangutan is a card we're probably going to talk about a lot during this set, but I'm going to focus on Fireblast for this particular section because Visions was the start of increasing the speed of red decks due to Fireblast, and burn decks became pretty popular with 4 lightning bolts, 4 incinerates, and 4 copies of Fireblast, and nobody to speak to this better than you, Red Mage.
Well, back when Visions came out,
I was going to say, you were a Red Mage back then.
I was not a Red Mage just yet. Eugene Harvey and I played just laborious 4-color blue control mirror matches in Vintage.
Okay.
And Eugene, by this point, Eugene had a better collection than I did, but the Delta was starting to close.
Okay.
At this point, I believe I owned a Time Walk and maybe 1 Mox.
Okay.
Like I was starting to fill out my collection a little bit. Eugene and I had the most robust collections in our playgroup.
Okay.
Eugene number 1 by far.
Yep.
Me number 2, and then who's ever in third is way behind.
Okay.
Much further behind me than I was behind Eugene. And there was someone who was kind of on the fringes of our playgroup. His name was Carl Greiser.
Okay, good memory.
Always played like red decks and didn't spend a lot of money on Magic. And when this set came out, he got his hands on 4 copies of Fireblast, and suddenly he was beating me and Eugene like close to half the time.
Oh wow!
We were starting to get like irritated.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, I know we all cut the Zoronorb from our Vintage deck because it's not good in the mirror.
Okay.
But now with Carl, we're putting the Zernor back in. We're going to get a little bit of it back. Yeah. So that was my introduction to the mono red experience, and Fireblast, of course, a huge part of that.
Yeah.
Even once you got down to 12, you didn't feel safe.
Total banger of a card. Let's talk about who this set was designed by. It was designed by Bill Rose, who was the lead, Charlie Catino, Don Felice, Howard Collenberg, and Joel Mick. And Visions was developed by Bill Rose, once again, who was the lead once again, Mike Elliott, William Jokic, Mark Rosewater, and Henry Stern. Art direction, once again, by Sue Ann Harkey. And this is a team that we're starting to see consistently show up on sets now.
And I think that's an important thing to do in general, but specifically when you're moving to this block structure. Continuity, coherence, planning things out in advance. That's an important thing of executing blocks. Before, you have these sort of scattershot sets, but you don't really feel it because they're all kind of their own standalone thing. But you can tell just because of the disparate power level between sets prior to this, that different people had to be working on it. Like, the same people were not responsible for Arabian Nights and Homelands. That is obvious.
Yes.
You just look at the cards, that's different teams.
Yep.
The type of planning and forethought and what are we going to do with our mechanics and conversations like, okay, let's say theoretically we want to make phasing a deck. You should not. They didn't do this.
Yep.
Just as an example, we want to make phasing a deck. Okay, how do we spread things out over the course of the block? So we don't just hand everyone the deck in Mirage. We give them some stuff to experiment with, and then it gets a little bit more, and then Weatherlight puts the cherry on top, whatever. All that kind of planning and architecture requires a team that can talk about this stuff and plan in advance. And that's really, really hard to do when just different people are managing these random scattershot sets like early on in Magic's history.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Let's talk about Visions and where it originated from. So this set is a split from Menagerie, which was the code name and the original name for Mirage. If you learned that, if you watched the last episode with us, you learned that little tidbit. But this set, Visions, it split off because Mirage was just too big. So they needed to make it smaller, and a way to do that was to split some cards off from that, again, originally named Menagerie. They said, okay, let's make a second set to go along with this. And for a brief time during its development, Visions was known by the code name Mirage Jr. Okay. It received its final name shortly after, and we have another fact about that a little later in the show. Mark Rosewater, maybe you've heard of him, was instrumental in determining the power level of Visions in the last development meeting. So that's my last fact, but I have a question for you. What does a last development meeting even look like? Assuming you've been a part of one.
Oh, all the time.
Okay,
constantly.
Great.
And I actually want to give a shout out to Rosewater here, who, again, if you're more recent to Magic, you're familiar with him as the head of design, the head creative, the vision, whatever. And Mark himself says that he's not much of a developer. That wasn't where his strong suit was. Not much of a power level guy, all that. Visions is really well developed in terms of the power level being in the right place, distributed across rarities, no really bad bets. Visions is way ahead of its time. So I want to give Mark a little bit of credit there.
Okay.
So the last meetings are typically all hands. There's the level 1 version of this, which is all hands on deck, come with a list of the cards you're worried about. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
And that is very common last minute development due diligence. I am also a fan, and I've done this myself when I've been leading sets and directing things, of saying, find 5 cards in the set that you think are really fun and not powerful enough to play. And let's talk about, are there ways to give this just a little bit of a jolt if we believe in the experience?
Okay.
But the baseline, this is kind of how it goes everywhere. Everyone would have the idea to do this, is just any last minute risks. Let's talk about it. And maybe we reduce power in some places. Maybe we make a note of, if we're worried about this thing, we're going to put a good answer to it in Weatherlight. So if we end up missing, at least there's some stopgap coming 3 months down the line. Maybe we should put something in the set right now if we think the risk is high enough, but we don't want to change the offending card.
Okay.
That's usually the shape of the meetings.
Okay. So I know sometimes we hear about how, how did something go out the door that way or something change very late in development. This is kind of the area where that happens, which is like, okay, we need to shift this to this, or, maybe someone doesn't step up and say something about a card, like whatever. This is the last chance to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. And a lot of Magic's biggest bungles have come out of last minute meetings and things like that. So, you are pretty much done playtesting at this point, and there's some places where you're just kind of spitballing and you overshoot because you don't have the opportunity to put it into play and test it out. Some his classic examples of this: Skull Clamp was apparently +1/+1, and then got changed to +1/-1.
Okay,
quite a bit different.
Maybe just a bit.
There was an issue with Umezawa's Jite that 2 of the modes were the same, and one of the modes was remove a counter to get a black mana.
Okay.
That doesn't work in the rules or it didn't at the time, because the timing between give a creature +2/+2 and make a mana, they work differently.
Okay.
So
sure.
The rules team came back and said, my understanding is the rules team came back and said, you can't do this. It doesn't work in the rules to have this card, working on 2 different speeds nested inside of the same activated power.
Okay.
So the mana thing got changed into -1/-1.
Got it.
So you want to be careful. You want to be careful with these meetings, because even if your heart's in the right place, you don't have the opportunity to really go back and check your work. So
Fair.
Just keep that in mind.
Okay. Those are the facts of ending development meetings and Visions. So normally where I transition you is to the flavor and storyline of Visions. However, there isn't really anything new to go over. So if you're interested in the flavor and storyline of Mirage block, then to the Mirage episode is where I will direct you, and you can learn more about the flavor and storyline of what the heck is going on this wonderful plane there. So instead of going to flavor and storyline and lore like we would, we are instead going to jump to the mechanics of Visions right after this. All right, everybody, it is now time to go over the mechanics of Visions, or as I am known to say, lack thereof, because Visions doesn't introduce any new mechanics. It instead uses previously used mechanics, including cumulative upkeep, flanking, phasing, poison counters, slow trips, and world enchantments. And Magic starts going this direction, right? Because you've got the big base set. In this instance, it's Mirage. It kind of sets the standard for what the next 2 small sets are going to look like in the block of the set. So for Mirage, we've seen some of these things. We have upkeep, flanking, phasing, poison counter, slow trips, etc. Okay, great. Well, we're going to do different takes on that, or more of that, in the next sets in the block.
And it sort of highlights an issue with the structure of Mirage and then Visions in terms of expanding upon the mechanics. A nice thing to do, as I mentioned before, is we're going to lay some seeds and then we can build up from there. Now, the power level of this ended up being way off, but let's go to Mirrodin, for example. The affinity stuff was not built for you out the gate. You had the artifact lands to work with, and you had Broodstar and a couple other pieces, Frogmite, Mirror Enforcer, whatever. There was a deck there that just wasn't very good.
Broodstar Affinity.
Yeah, Broodstar Affinity. That was
it.
And then you get to Darksteel and Skull Clamp, Arcbound Ravager, all the rest. Now, again, I want to reiterate, the power level was off.
Maybe a little.
But that is a good execution insofar as you give people a little sample, you can kick the tires on it. And then the next set, it's like, oh, this is actually good. And the players who dismissed it the first time now can go back and reevaluate all the old cards that they had dismissed before. And people who were happily playing their Broodstar Affinity deck get to go, oh my Lord, look at all the stuff from my deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
All this is great. The problem that we have here is in Mirage, none of these mechanics are really built around you as such. Cumulative upkeep, just random thing on cards. Flanking, just a random thing on cards. Phasing, you could ostensibly try to do something build around it with that. They chose not to.
Yep.
You have poison, which is built around it, but there's only one card in the set. So there's no opportunity for Visions to say, okay, here's mechanic blah, and now here's a new thing that goes along with it.
Yeah.
Or there's a counter type that's in Mirage, and now we do proliferate in Visions. You go back and you reevaluate all the cards. So Mirage doesn't really lend itself very well to that sort of build out because the mechanics as such are just sort of, yeah, this is just a thing on cards.
Yeah.
This is just a way of costing things in the instance of cumulative upkeep, and not something that you can really add on top of in a way that's satisfying and inspires people to go back and look at the old cards with a new context.
Visions, however, did include many creatures that had abilities that triggered upon entering the battlefield. So there are more ETB creatures in this set, and notable ones. This meant that some creatures could now do things normally reserved for instants, sorceries, and costly activated abilities. Now, again, if you're watching this show, you're probably playing Magic nowadays, and Visions is like, you might be here learning about Visions and stuff, but believe it or not, at one point, seeing a creature enter the battlefield and do something was like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, we see creatures enter the battlefield and like you get to pick a mode or they do or they do multiple things, right? But cards like Necrotol and Uktabi Orangutan and Mana War at the time were probably pretty wild to see.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I built a deck that played all three of them.
Okay.
I got my hands on every 5-color land I could get my hands on.
Sure.
Never duel, and just Uktabiing and Mana Warring and Necrotol into my heart's content.
So I just like the idea of, oh my gosh, like you were playing at the time. I wasn't, of just like, have you guys seen Necrotol? And it's like, what, 4-mana, 2/1, first strike comes in and kills something. That's a heck of a Magic card back in, well, I guess technically 97, 96.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty wild.
It's a sicko.
Yeah.
A lot of great stuff going on here. Start from a top level. Why would you do creatures with enter the battlefield triggers like this?
Okay.
It was very true at the time and is still true to varying degrees today that Magic at a baseline incentivizes people to play decks with 0 creatures because it's very powerful to game 1 blank all your removal spells. Magic is always pushing back against that. And it, on top of it being really bad incentives, those decks typically don't play that well. They're light on interaction because a lot of interaction in Magic comes from creatures attacking and blocking, and using removal spells and all that good stuff. So putting essentially spells on creatures at a high rate, which these were at the time, you go, okay, I want to play Uktabi Orangutan, I want to play Necrotol, I want to play Mana War, just because they're good cards. Once you add the first creature to your deck, you are no longer in blanking removal space. And so that incentive goes away and you just play with the creatures that you want to.
Sure.
So the first time you can push someone into just getting a creature into their deck and get away from the incentive structure of playing with no creatures, everyone's having a better time.
Okay.
The cards are very satisfying to play with because they feel very 2-for-1-y, but the context still matters. You can, let's say you play hypothetical card, destroy target artifact, draw a card.
Okay.
That is a 2-for-1. I cast that against you, and I kill your artifact, and I draw a card.
Yep.
And that exchange is pretty flat. Now let's compare that to Uktabi Orangutan. Let's say you have no creatures in your hand. Uktabi Orangutan could be a lot better than draw a card because it's hitting you the entire time. You can also recur it. I can recur my Uktabi Orangutan if you're not doing anything with it. Below other artifacts.
Yep. It's
easier to recur creatures than spells, typically. So that's part of it. Let's say Uktabi Orangutan, your artifact, and then you play a 3/3. Is it a 2-for-1? I don't know. My Uktabi Orangutan can't attack or block, but maybe I draw a removal spell and then I break it up. Or maybe I play a second 2/2 and now my pair of 2/2s can hold off your 3/3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This stuff just engenders way more dynamic exchanges than things like draw a card or other things in sort of the cantrip space.
Yeah, sure.
Because even a card as simple as 2/2 no powers has a context that can shift depending on what I'm doing and what you're doing after the fact. So really great stuff going on here. Not surprising that Magic does, in my opinion, probably too much of it. nowadays, but it's starting from a really good place. And the last little bit about this is it's a way of making cards that do stuff that are not complicated after the card resolves.
Sure. Okay.
Your Octavia Orangutan certainly feels like it's a complicated card to play with, right? Because I'm trying to time it right against your artifacts, your mana up or whatever. But once I play it, once that stress has been alleviated, just a 2/2 blank. And I think there's a lot of good comes out of the card itself is interesting or complicated to play with, picking your time or whatever. But once you've made your move, it's pretty simple on the board. And these cards are that across the board, barely even creature keywords on them.
It's so cool to just see kind of where ETB creatures originated from, and looking at where they are now. I agree with you. I think that Magic does do too many of them, and a lot of them are very, very powerful. But it also incentivizes, on the whole, I think, good things like you did mention. So it started somewhere, and it looks to have started mostly here in Visions. But enough about that, because it's game time, everybody. Visions introduced the following creature types. I hope our editor has our noises and our scoreboard ready.
I was born ready.
How well do you think you know this set?
Pretty poorly.
Ooh.
From that level, pretty poorly.
Okay, well, good news. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's only 10.
Okay. That sounds like a lot. The set's not that big.
There's only 10.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Caterpillar, later changed to insect.
Oh. I don't know.
Giant caterpillar.
Okay.
Chimera. There are 4 of them.
Oh no. These are the 4-mana 2/2s?
Yep.
I have no idea what their names are.
Okay. We have Brass Talon Chimera,
Sure.
Iron Heart, Lead Belly, and Tin Wing Chimera.
Great.
I would have accepted any one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're 0 for 2. Hippopotamus, later changed to hippo.
Pygmy Hippo?
That's correct.
Yeah.
On the board. Jellyfish.
Manowar.
Okay, 2. 2 of 4. Lycanthrope, later changed to plant fungus.
Not gonna get that.
Now you know it. Anytime I say that, you know the answer.
Lycanthrope?
That is correct.
Okay.
3 of 5. Necrosavant, later changed to zombie giant.
That is Necrosavant.
That is correct. Necrotol, later changed to assassin.
That's Necrotol.
That is correct. Python, later changed to snake.
Herboa?
Nah, you know it.
A Python. Okay.
You've gotten 6. Well done. Warthog, later changed to boar.
Giant Warhog? Warhog.
Which one's your answer?
Warhog.
That is correct.
Okay.
And wildebeest, later changed to antelope beasts. I'll give you a hint.
Stampeding wildebeest?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. So that's it. You got the chimeras. You kind of had a feel.
Yeah, well,
you had a feel of what was going on.
Are these the 4-mana 2/2s? No, I don't have their names, but
Why would anyone have their names? They're horrible.
They are pretty bad.
It's a weird cycle to have in the set. It's a really weird cycle to have. But yeah, they didn't really get too tricky here with the creature types and all of that other stuff. Stampeder Wildebeest, kind of a banger.
Oh yeah,
kind of a banger. Nice to see that one get a little shout out here. Speaking of cycles, we're all done with the mechanics of the set. Again, lack thereof. This is kind of what's probably going to start happening in the show is as we go into the mechanics section, the base set, we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get to, the follow-up expansion for the base set, we're probably not going to have a ton.
Well, I don't know if that's true. Weatherlight is pretty radically different from these two sets.
Okay.
Not necessarily on a mechanical level, although there is some of that, but just the cards are kind of out there. Weatherlight has a ton of just graveyard matters as part of the set.
Okay.
Which you can argue whether or not that's a mechanic, but that's something very different than what's in Visions and Mirage.
Okay. Well, when we get to Weatherlight, that's going to be our next episode. We'll go over that stuff. For now, we're taking a short break. When we do come back, it's time for the cycles of Visions. See you soon. All right, everybody. It is now time for my favorite part of the show. It's the cycles of Visions. We got 4 to go over today, and we are going to start with more charms. This set has a charm cycle just like Mirage did, and each of these common instants has a cost of M and lets you choose one of 3 possible effects. There are 5: Hope Charm, Vision Charm, Funeral Charm, Hearth Charm, and Emerald Charm. Funeral Charm, I think you know better than most.
I played it my first Pro Tour
There it
deck.
is. Yep.
Pro Tour New Orleans 2001 or 2002.
Okay.
Our team, myself, Adam Horvath, and Josip Levidovich, all played 4 copies.
It's a lot of those.
So, a couple things going on here.
Okay.
Funeral Charm. We were expecting a lot of 1 toughness creatures because they just Apocalypse had just come out. They made Spectral Links. We had Riverboa in our deck. We thought other people had Riverboa, whatever. This is mono red beatdown decks, a lot of 1 toughness. So great.
Okay.
Make them choose to discard a card, instant speed. So it's never dead.
True.
And if they have no hand, you just tag them in their draw step.
True.
It's insane. And then Swamp Walk, it comes up.
It could come up.
So I played my last round. I was out of contention for day 2, but I played against a reanimator opponent.
Okay.
This was the Pro Tour that Your Move Games busted out reanimator for the first time. 3 copies in the top 8, whole thing.
Okay.
So I was playing. I believe it was against Chris Senhouse, who was also working with YMG, so it was their list. So I got these Funeral Charms. Not great against reanimator. All their stuff is too big. And making them choose and discard a card.
Not good.
A little sketchy.
Not good.
A little sketchy.
Yep. Okay.
So I got nothing in my sideboard for these people. And so I have Funeral Charm in my deck and also Hunted Wumpus. Not sure why I played this card, but 4 mana, 6/6. When it comes to play, your opponent gets to put a creature from their hand onto the battlefield.
It's big.
Also a little sketchy against Reanimator. So I use a duress or something against him in game 3. See that the coast is clear, and I get to play my Hunted Wumpus.
Okay.
So Hunted Wumpus gets a shot in, Hunted Wumpus gets another shot in, and Chris finally reanimates something that's going to stabilize, and he's at 8, something like that. And I go, Funeral Charm, give Hunted Wumpus +2/-1. Funeral Charm, give Hunted Wumpus Swamp Walk across the finish line. And Chris looked to the person next to him, who I don't even know if Chris knew him or not, and said, I'm never playing a match of Magic again. And that was how my first Pro Tour ended.
Might be true. May have never played again.
I think he was still around for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, his Reanimator deck losing to Hunted Wumpus and 2 Funeral Charms from me playing in my first Pro Tour was enough for him to claim that he was out.
That's what makes Magic great. That's all I gotta say. It's what makes Magic great. Weird stuff can happen.
Yeah.
So the charm cycle is super, super rad. We've got Color Hoser enchantments. Each of these uncommon enchantments has an additional or a greater effect against enemy colors. And I think if you've been watching this show, you know how much I love a Hosa. White has Honorable Passage. Blue has Dream Tides. Black has Desolation. Red has Heat Wave. And green has Elephant Grass. So let's take a look at each of these here real quick. I'm going to start with Honorable Passage, which is a card I remember. And actually, they're not enchantments. They're just cards. So that's a bit of a typo on my end. They're just color hosers. That's fine. Honorable Passage. Prevent all damage to you or target creature from any one source. If that source is red, Honorable Passage deals to the source's controller an amount of damage equal to the enchantment of prevented damage. Okay, sure. So
I think that's an awesome design.
Okay.
Just kind of works. And the extent to which it's punishing your opponent is based on how proactive you are being.
Yeah.
How much does it matter that you're redirecting damage? Too many of the color hoses back then, some of it is power level, but also some of it is, it's just play this card, don't do anything for the rest of the game.
Yep.
That's what's going on.
Yep.
And this is actually paying you out in damage, which is good if you are playing an interactive combat focused game.
Yep. Totally agree. Dream Tides, 2 UU, so 4 mana blue enchantment. Creatures do not untap during their controller's untap phase. Each non-green creature's controller may pay an additional 2 during his or her untap to untap that creature. Okay.
Miserable.
So, yeah, that's not fun at all.
Yeah. Awful.
Okay.
Next.
Yep, I don't like that one very much. Okay, what's black got for us? Black is generally the rudest of the bunch. Desolation. This one cost 1 BB, so 3 total. At the end of each turn, each player who tapped a land for mana during that turn sacrifices a land. If a plains is sacrificed in this way, Desolation deals 2 damage to that plains controller.
Okay, so that design is horrible.
Yeah.
At least first of all, the color hosing part of it is not adding that much power.
Yep.
And second, at least it's getting the game over with.
Okay, all things you're in favor of.
Awful design, but I appreciate some of the sensibilities going on there.
Heat Wave. 2 and a red. That's a 3-mana enchantment with commune of upkeep of a red. Blue creatures cannot block creatures you control. Okay. Non-blue creatures cannot block creatures you control unless their controller pays an additional 1 life for each blocking creature.
Horrendous.
Yeah.
So it doesn't speak to the issue with blue at all.
I was gonna say blue's not trying to block.
The issue is not that I can't get through your blockers. It's that you never play anything except counter spells and control magics.
Yeah.
And then also allowing someone to block by paying life is like, you kind of split that a little bit.
Okay.
It's a little mathy to be like, okay, so I can pay 1 and that saves damage theoretically, but maybe not.
Yep.
Just make them pay a mana. So then you're at least spreading it.
That's what I was
mean?
surprised about. Why don't I have to pay? Like, it constricts their play to have to pay mana.
Right.
Right. Instead of just like, okay, I'm at 20, I'll pay. I'm at 19 now, I'll block.
Yeah. The act of blocking already is calculating paying life for board position.
Yeah.
So this is just more of the same calculus.
Lastly, here we have Elephant Grass. Single green enchantment, commune of upkeep, 1 colorless. Black creatures cannot attack you. Non-black creatures cannot attack you unless their controller pays an additional 2 for each attacking creature. So this is propaganda in green with a commune of upkeep.
Except it's a hard lock against black decks.
Also that.
Yeah. So of the designs, we have 2 different you can't attack for the rest of the games.
Yep.
We have 1 design that is actively good, and then 2 designs that are nonsense.
Yep.
That's actually not bad for that era.
Compared to what they did around that time, not bad.
1 actively good design is much better than how these cycles typically grade out.
We're going to move on to our next cycle here, which are the Crew lands. But these are the original Crew lands, not the Ravnica Crews like Simic Growth Chamber that you might be thinking of. Each of these uncommon lands is sacrificed when it enters the battlefield, unless you return an untapped basic land of a given type to your hand and add 2 mana. So the OG, here's the 5. Crew, Coral Atoll, Everglades, Dormant Volcano, and Jungle Basin. Crew, I guess, can be considered the OG because that's kind of what the cycle is named after. So Crew is, it enters the battlefield tapped. When Crew comes into play, return an untapped plains you control to owner's hand or bury Crew, and then you tap Crew, to add a white and 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. There it is.
These designs are, the combination of unappealing to how much power is actually there, not a great ratio.
Okay.
There is at least some novelty because, first of all, land that taps for 2 mana, kind of new design space at the time. They touched on it a little bit of alliances, but, it's still fairly new in the game's history. And then returning a land to your hand is, of course, it's typically a drawback, not a thing you want to be doing. But there are things that pay you off for playing lands or resetting enchantments or whatever. So it has purpose and synergy beyond the level 1 thing.
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of making designs that good, that unappealing.
Okay.
These are relatively modest in the scheme of things because you have to be down the mana of the turn in question. But the ones in Ravnica block are so cracked.
Oh, yeah, those cards are outrageous.
Yeah, because you can return a tapped land, which is just so outlandish.
Yeah, Boros Garrison, Slicing Sanctuary, the whole gang.
Game.
Just,
Game.
I can't wait till we get to those.
Yeah.
And, those might be the cards that, win the limited award.
Oh, yeah.
They were so outrageous.
Yes.
My final cycle here is the opposing color rares. The cost of each of these rares includes mana of 2 opposing colors. We got 5 cards here. I'll read them first, which is Righteous War, Firestorm Hellkite, Squandered Resources, Sullivan's Legacy, and Pygmy Hippo. Now we're going to go over these one by one before we close our cycles. Righteous War. 1, a white, and a black. Enchantment. All white creatures you control gain protection from black. All black creatures you control gain protection from white.
Sure.
I guess.
I mean, it plays really badly.
Yeah.
There is a certain there is something good sometimes in a development sense of giving people hosers that are really good in the mirror match, because if the deck ends up being good, people are just spending sideboard slots fighting the mirror. Okay. And ideally that gives some bandwidth to whatever. This card is just way too extreme.
Yeah.
But, there is, Volshock Refugee, the red 1/3/2 protection from red.
Yep. I remember that card.
And it's just, if this card's in people's sideboards, it's for the mirror. And so red decks have less for other stuff. So the red deck is too good. Great. This just helps us out. It's free, whatever. So there's a good principle going on here. This execution is just way too extreme.
Next up is Firestorm Hellkite. 4, 1 blue and 1 red, 6/6 dragon, flying trample, commune of upkeep, a blue and a red. So this one's not going to be played very long.
Yeah, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
Way worse than just Mom Odijin or
Shiver Dragon. Yeah.
Great. But whatever, fine.
Yeah, like if you're going to have it be like that, it's probably going to have haste or something.
We gotta get another cumulative upkeep design. Where are we going to put it? How about like a dragon that people would otherwise like?
Yeah.
No.
Next up is Squandered Resources. A black and a green enchantment. Sacrifice a land. Add to your mana pool 1 mana of any type the sacrificed land could produce. Play this ability as a mana source. Part of a combo deck.
Yes.
Yeah.
Squandered Resources, Prosperity, Cadaverous Bloom. There was a whole thing. I think we might need to get to Weatherlight to unpack the whole thing, but he basically generated a ton of mana and then used X spells of various sorts.
Yeah, I think you won with Drain Life, if memory serves. But
yeah.
Okay. Cadaverous Bloom is from Mirage, so that was 3 black and a green. Choose a card in your hand and remove it from the game. Add black, or green to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Okay, sure.
I'm forgetting the name of the card, but there was also a part of the combo. If I recall correctly, it was like green 2. Everyone goes up to 5 lands.
Okay.
And so with Squandered Resources, you were just netting a ton of mana. That was also part of it.
Okay.
I wish I could remember the name of the card, and I don't know if I'm even describing it correctly, but there was some additional element to that.
I'm taking I think you might be thinking of Natural Balance.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. 2 green might be between us right now. Each player controlling 6 or more lands sacrifices enough lands to reduce his or her land total to 5. Each player controlling 4 or fewer lands may search his or her library for enough basic land to bring his or her land total to 5 and put those lands into play. Those players. Okay, sure. So
if I squander resources away all of my lands,
yep.
This is net plus 6 mana.
Okay.
Because you get the lands untapped and then also can sack them to the squander resources.
Okay.
So this is just a busted dark ritual in the context of the combo.
Okay, got it. Let's go to Sullivan's Legacy. This is a red and a white card.
Oh, yeah. Your boy's got some history with this one.
You're excited about this. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never even seen this card before. It's an enchantment. It costs a red and a white. When Sullivan's Legacy comes into play,
keep going.
Bury all Djinns and Ifrits. Okay. Whenever a Djinn or Ifrit comes into play, whenever a Djinn or Ifrit comes into play, bury it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a Djinn and Ifrit zone. No, they're not allowed.
So
okay.
I was playing a deck of sorts in type 1 or vintage of sorts at the time.
Okay.
It was just like red, white, Moldovan Horde, Sarah Angel, Mistress Factory, removal. That was basically what the deck was I was playing.
Okay.
So I went to one of the Gray Matter type 1 tournaments, the ones that BDM ran. And back then, a lot of the just people with just random power decks were just, Zuzam, Urnam, Serendib, whatever.
Sure, all of
So I'm like, I'm just going to have some Sullivan's Legacies in my sideboard. Can't be worse than the other stuff I was going to play. And I see plenty of decks in round 1. I just KO'd someone with this thing. It was.
How does this card not have cumulative upkeep?
Because it's narrow enough that you might be okay with it.
This just strikes me as the kind of card that they would put cumulative upkeep on because they're like, we don't want this to be in play forever.
Yeah, I think this is a candidate for cumulative upkeep for the reasons that you're saying. I can also just say it's narrow enough, and at the time, I think this was you could justify this card as this is for giving the new player some hope against money bags over there.
Sure.
Because their decks is just all Jins and Ifrits.
Okay.
I don't know what the purpose of this was exactly, but there's someone out there, don't remember your name, but if you're watching, you remember what happened.
Got him good.
You're discarding a hand size.
Pygmy Hippo is the last one here. One of my favorite Magic cards of all time because I love hippos and also because I really like the art. And I really like green-blue cards. This costs a green and a blue. It's a 2/2, summon hippopotamus, later changed to hippo. A Pygmy Hippo attacks and is not blocked. You may choose to have it deal no combat damage this turn. This is because hippos are friendly. If you do, defending player draws all mana from his or her lands and then his or her mana pool is emptied. After combat, add an equal amount of colorless mana to your mana pool. Oh my gosh, this hippo's a thief.
Yeah, so this is a pretty intense card. So this is 2 mana 2/2. So we're already talking at the time, a thing to think about.
Okay.
And it's basically like attack, tap them out. So if they have any counter spells, they don't work, and then mana drain them. It is an intense. It's often has no text against like a lot of people.
Sure.
But the people this card is good against, it is just over. Turn 2 and it's over.
So I've always seen pictures of Pygmy Hippo, but I've never taken the time to read the card. This thing just against like an opposing blue deck. Yep, that's all mine. They can't make a card like this now, right? This never happened.
This is like Carpet of Flowers, but they also have to tap out.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. It showed up a little bit back in the day. Like people played with it sometimes.
Okay. I like this card, and I really like hippos. So this looks like a friendly friend. Yeah. Give me that mana. I'm here for this mana. Just leave this hippo here forever if it's between us. It's never been reprinted. Lame. All right. That's it for cycles, everybody. A great way to end things there with the hippo. And I did not know you had a legacy with Sullivan's legacy.
Oh, so, well, it's not mine. It's my opponent's legacy.
That person still has their Ifrits and Jins in hand.
They were discarded to hand size.
Yeah, just still there, just waiting to cast them.
Zams and Erdams just every turn.
I just like the idea also that you have to get the legacy off the battlefield somehow. It's like, okay, so I can't continue playing the game until I kill this, and then I can start casting my stuff. It's not like, hey, on your upkeep, sacrifice a Jinder and Ifrit. It's like, no, you can't cast them, and the ones that are in play are dead.
Yeah. Normally the sweepers and hosers that play well are on one of two places.
Okay.
One is it catches you up and then we play on.
Yep.
Or this stops you from developing whatever.
Yep.
The cards that mix the two together are pretty rough because it just means that if you draw this card against the right opponent at any time,
it's over. It's game over.
Yeah.
And boy, is that card really messed up, actually.
Yeah.
Of all the hosers that we've talked about on this show, this one's very definitive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, what the heck? I just can't even play anymore. But so it goes. Okay, cycles are done. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, it's time for a little bit of trivia and some fun facts about Visions right after this. All right, everybody, it is now time to dive into the trivia and a couple of fun facts and notable cards here from Visions. A little different from our facts section at the beginning of the show about the set. Visions was the first set to have the same name as a Magic card printed earlier, which I'm sure is something they probably always thought about. Maybe how would we handle this if we ran into it? Well, Visions, the card, that was first printed in Legends in 4th edition. It's a very bad Magic card. Though it began life as Mirage Jr., Visions, the set, quickly went through a series of name changes. Early names included Lion's Eye to tie in with Lion's Eye Diamond from Mirage, and Jungle's Edge to complement the African feel of the set. Initially, Visions was discarded because it was a name of a card, yes, but this same argument led to the card Mirage being renamed Shimmer. But Ashmira's prophecies were central enough to the backstory to make the name work. So we have seen over the course of Magic, heck, not only have we seen cards exist and then be named a set, but we've also seen vice versa with the card Urza Saga.
Yep. Which
is the card I just thought of that was a set first and they made it into a card.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a very powerful card. So, once you kind of rip this Band-Aid off, it seems like it's fine enough to do.
I think the word Visions is innocuous enough that you it should constrain you from naming a set that because you have a card named that.
Okay.
The Urza Saga case is a little bit I'm more skeptical of, just because it is generally bad practice to call two different things the same name.
Yeah, okay.
But it's separated by so many years, and
It's long.
only going to create confusion in older formats, if even then, that I think it's fine.
Sure.
But yeah, I think just Visions as a name is generic enough that you just got to plow through if you think that's the right name for the set.
Necrotal was originally named, I'm going to do my best here, Shaitan, Sheitan. In parentheses, my notes say here, Satan. But this was deemed offensive. We agree.
I don't know about offensive, but just call it something else.
Okay.
It's just, this is a pretty corny thing to be calling Satan. It's a 2/1 first striker.
Yeah, real tough.
You're going to put it on Lord of the Pit.
Yeah, sure.
Don't put it on this thing.
Kisku Drake is an anagram for Sucky Drake, though it was better than it should have been for green. Okay, so first of all, let's figure out what old Kisku Drake does here. You don't have any backstories with this one?
Read it to me, I'll let you know.
All right, 3 and a green. So it's a 4-mana 2/2 summon Drake. Flying. You can pay a green to give it +0/+1 until end of turn. You cannot spend more than green. Wait, hold on. You cannot spend more green in this way each turn. You can only activate this ability once each turn. Okay, that's what Scryfall says.
Okay.
That reads weird on the card.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to do this once to make it into a 2/3, and then you can sacrifice Kisku Drake and a card named Spitting Drake to search your library for a card named to search your deck for a card named Vishivan Dragon and put that card on the battlefield in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Why are we going through all this work to put a dragon into play?
Yeah, I mean, as a 4-mana 2/2 flyer, it's just not that bad for the time.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Development, what led to you can only activate this green ability once? I just love the idea of, hey, it's too good as a 2/4. You can make it a 2/3, nothing more.
2 arguments for it.
Okay.
I don't know if I would believe in either, but 2 arguments I can think of.
All right, I'm listening.
One is you can pump this only N times was a thing they did a lot back in the day, convey that it was a baby Drake or dragon.
Okay.
Dragon whelp and similar.
Okay.
The second argument is this is pretty color pie bleeding if you can activate it over and over again. Because the now you're very much into white territory.
Okay.
Whereas, I think it's color pie bleeding anyway. But the more that you let people activate it, the more color pie bleeding it is.
Okay.
But the real answer is, I don't know.
All right.
This is nonsense.
Okay.
Who asked for this? But it's really not that bad because just back then a 4-mana 2/2 flyer was fine.
The sheep mancer.
Venomancer.
Yeah, Venomancer was inspired by many of R&D, playing Warcraft 2 at Wizards. Warcraft 2 specifically has a creature that turns other creatures into sheep, and Bill Rose loved doing that, so he made a card that did that. Okay, so a couple of things here. One, I was a Warcraft 3 person, not really a Warcraft 2 person. But like that game, I believe, if memory serves, it's like Polymorph was an ability that some stuff had. And yes, there was you could turn some stuff into sheep. Super cool. First and foremost, nerds.
Nerd.
That is why you're not on the team.
Just trying to be helpful.
Get back to work.
Yeah. Second of all, I don't know if I was in charge of if I was like in lead design or lead development, I'd probably make a card that I want to see in there.
Sure. I think this also might have been the inspiration for the beloved Saviors of Kamigawa mechanic Sweep.
Okay.
Doesn't this thing just make you pick up all your lands?
Let me look at old Ovi here real quick.
My recollection is this is just you have to upheaval yourself to do it.
All right. It's in between us right now, I'm sure. But here it is. All right. 2 and a blue, 0/1. When it comes into play, return 3 basic lands you control to owner's hand or bury Venomancer. And then tap, return this thing to owner's hand, bury target creature, and put a sheep token into play under the control of the creature's controller. Treat this token as a 0/1 green creature. Okay, I think the sheep should be white, not green, personal opinion. It's a lot of work to kill a creature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't very good.
No.
No.
Okay, so if you're so inspired and you want to make something work, you could make it good.
This plays so badly, though.
Yeah.
Tap, kill your creature, put this back in my hand and a bunch of lands. Like awful. What an awful experience for both players.
Yeah, I was gonna. So I think it plays badly I think it plays worse for me, the person who controls it, more so than the opponent.
Yeah,
it's not fun for the opponent either. But like, okay, I have to pick up 3 lands, activate this. I want to play it again. I have to wait like 3 more turns. It seems horrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't play well.
Okay.
It's not a good design.
All right, I'm glad we agree.
This is what happens when you're like, let's make an homage to our land party Warcraft 2 games.
Yeah.
Instead of just making a card people like.
Just get back to work.
Get back to work.
Visions was the last set to feature a new creature that creates poison counters. That was Sequata Assassin for over 10 years until this mechanic reappeared as the poisonous keyword on 2 future shifted cards from Future Sight, Snake Cult Initiation and Virulent Sliver. So, poison counters, I'm going to guess, not really a big hit with people.
No, it was beloved.
Really?
That's one of the reasons they went back and did it again. Because in spite of it being horrendous on power level,
okay,
and there only being like 7 cards that could do it at the time, people were into it.
That's so weird because like you really couldn't do it effectively.
Yeah, but something that, circumventing the person who's gaining life, like everyone's casual scene has the person who plays the life gain deck.
Okay.
And subverting that completely is really satisfying.
All right, I believe you.
People are into it.
You were there. Lastly, due to the unusual number of commons in this set, the following commons appear on the rare print sheet instead of the common print sheet. Keeper of Kukis, King Cheetah, Man of War, Phyrexian Walker, Resistance Fighter, Sisay's Ring, and Urborg Mindsucker. Now we're going to do a little something different here. We've got some notable cards to talk about because they might not get much shine the rest of the show. So we're going to start with Chronotog.
Mm-hmm.
This creature looks pretty bad at first. For those of you not familiar with Chronotog, it's probably between us right now, but I'll give you a little, I can do a little read ski here for you. It's a Bluatog. I know that much. 1 and a blue, so it's a 2-mana 1/2. Skip your next turn. Chronotog gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Uses his ability only once each turn. Okay, so this old humdinger, it was a temporary boost in size, yes, but the ability was found to have benefits in a deck that established a lock, if you will. Maybe something stasis related. Not that you would ever put me in a stasis lock. That's not something,
I wouldn't think of it.
That's not something you would ever do.
Black Lotus.
Okay.
Stasis. Go. We out of the wood, Jeff. We got some time.
12.
Time
and a lot of cards.
We have the
one. Oh, Stasis.
That's right. Someone's learning some lessons.
Ooh, Stasis Kismet is
that a combo?
Stasis Kismet is tough.
Did this card see much play back in the day?
People try it in stasis decks. There are usually easier ways or more useful ways of establishing the lock.
Okay.
But people, tried whatever.
Okay. Goblin Recruiter. This one, bit of a humdinger. Like most Goblin cards, Goblin Recruiter was overlooked until Onslaught was released because Onslaught brought a lot of really good goblins along with it. And the Goblin archetype began to dominate Extended and Legacy. I played Extended Goblins for a little while after Recruiter was banned, and then played it a decent amount in Legacy, but way after it was super good. And as mentioned, the card was banned in Extended until 6th edition rotated out and is still banned in Legacy. Any fond memories of Goblin Recruiter?
No, it's awful.
It is really bad.
Just takes 5 minutes. Just pick up your deck and stack it on turn 2. It's too bad.
Food Chain Goblins, everybody. I don't know if people know that one.
Awful.
Okay.
This is a maybe fringe ban on power level, but quality of life. If you're someone who's like complaining about Sensei's Divining Top, and with good reason, wait till you see this thing in action.
Yeah. So for those of you not in the know, Goblin Recruiter, pretty simple card. 1 and a red. So 2 mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for any number of Goblin cards you choose, reveal those cards, then shuffle your library and put them on top of it in any order, effectively stacking your deck. And when you untap and draw, your opponent's probably dead.
Yeah, this design is one of those things where it's probably innocuous enough at the time because there just aren't that many goblins and the goblins aren't that good. So it's not really coming up.
It's also like kind of on flavor.
Yeah, totally. But then once it becomes a thing, it's like, oh, this is intolerable.
Yeah, we can never do this again.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Mana War. Another enters the battlefield creature. Mana War allowed blue players a measure of controlling the battlefield, basically by bouncing a creature that ideally costs more than it, but could cost the same or less, of course. And we've seen many Mana War style effects over the past 25 years.
Yeah, and this is a really good example of the, this turns someone into a deck that wants to play creatures, and some of the power of Mana War comes from attacking by clearing out a blocker. And so it's an innocuous card, but it does really drive incentives in the right place.
Quirion Ranger, single green, 1/1. I'm going to talk about this one next. We see this a lot in Legacy Elves, I think most notably. But it also sees some play in like Pauper as well. It allows the player to basically cheat on mana by tapping land, returning it to their hand, and then playing it again. And then it would untap elves like Priest of Titania or Fellows or yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of elves that you can untap that generate a lot of mana. My fondest memories of this card are seeing it in Legacy Elves and a way to try to cast Natural Order as soon as possible, realistically.
Yeah, it's a weird design. It's nice that it happens to synergize with a bunch of elves, and it has certainly a large kind of competitive pedigree. But I remember seeing this when it first came out and thinking, feels like there's something you can do here, but I can't really figure it out.
Yeah, maybe like not your speed.
Yeah.
Okay. Really good with Dried Arbor too. I remember that. Relentless Assault. This is, of course, 2/RR sorcery. You get to attack again. Memory serves. Yep. You get another untap all creatures that attack this turn. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Cool. These additional attacking Magic cards have not been the best in competitive play.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I imagine when you see the first one of these that ever gets printed, you're like, okay, this is cool. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but this is really cool.
Yeah. Was very popular at the time I was into it.
Okay.
I think it might have been one of the most expensive cards on pre-release. Like
I would believe that
came out. The issue here is that it's very win-more-y.
Yep.
Cards that are useful when you're already winning are pretty bad typically because you were already winning.
Yep.
So when is Relentless Assault good? It's like, I have a ton of creatures and you have nothing. It's like, well, that sounds like a spot where I'm pretty likely to win anyway.
Sure.
And if I'm not, it's because I'm getting locked out of combat. Was Relentless Assault bad against? Well, removal, if you don't have anything to do with it, then whatever. Also, blockers, because I can block a second time
Sure.
if I have creatures of a certain size. So it's not helping you in the spots where your opponent's fighting back against whatever you were doing. And it's only really good in the spots where you were probably winning anyway. But it's just such a splashy thing to read. It feels so powerful.
Yes.
That even though it was bad, no one really cared. People were into it.
See, that's what I like about it, is that it reads powerful. And the first time you see this style of effect, if you're like new to Magic or just, you've been playing Magic for a while and you see it for the first time, you might think it's super cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is a card that I would show to someone who had never played Magic before and was like, check out this game.
Yeah.
Because the story to the card to feeling like you're cheating one of the fundamental elements of the game engine, just awesome.
Next up, is Uktabi Orangutan. This is kind of the ultimate enters the battlefield creature, but it does have a little bit of weirdness behind it, mostly art related. It was also a way for green to kill artifacts, which was not a thing green could really do at the time. But the card art also had what looked like two yellow monkeys in the background mating, which was poked fun at in the card Uktabi Kong from Unhinged that shows the same two monkeys in the background, one of which is seemingly present. So Sue Ann Harkey was the art director. Don't know what led to the decision to having the monkeys hanging out back there doing their thing, but it is an iconic piece of Magic artwork.
It sure is.
There you go.
Had a million nicknames for that thing back in the day. None of them are appropriate.
Yeah, won't be saying any of those. Uktabi Kong. Okay, just brief interlude. You a fan of Unhinged sets? Any of this stuff? Yeah. I'm actually like weirdly excited to do them on this show.
Yeah.
I don't really know. Like, I don't know what I'm expecting out of it, but when we do Unglued, which is at some point next year, I don't even know how it's going to go.
I don't want to ruin anyone's time because I do know there is an audience for this stuff.
Of course.
And whatever.
Yeah.
But Magic is not a great medium for communicating jokes,
Okay.
and it is not helped by the people who are trying to tell those jokes.
That's fair.
That is my analysis.
That's a very nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Undiscovered Paradise. This land can produce 5 colors of mana, but returns to its owner's hand the turn after it is used. It was instrumental in allowing 4 and 5 color decks to dominate 1997 and 1998. Any experiences with this card?
Loved it. Got 4 copies. Played in decks that were horrible. Had a great time. It was awesome.
Okay.
It was like turn 1 bird, and then like pick up the undiscovered Paradise. The next turn, play. So I'm trying to remember the cards that were in this deck. It was Birds of Paradise, Suatal Lancer, Man of War,
Okay.
Daralore, only black card.
Okay.
Do you know that one?
It's like 4 mana 4/4, and then black spells cost a additional black.
Spells.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no other black spells.
Yeah, that's right. Broke it.
Yep. Armageddon. You can kind of piece together the 5C medium cards.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it. Loved every minute of it.
Last one to mention here is Vampiric Tutor.
Oh yeah.
This instant, of course, you can pay 2 life, search for a card, any card you want to, and put that card on top of your deck, shuffle your deck, and put that card on top of the deck. It has allowed for toolbox decks, combo decks. It's really good in Vintage Cube. It's just a really, really powerful card that'll almost certainly never be reprinted. And I can't imagine a world where you could play 4 of these, but that world did exist.
Oh, for a long time.
Yeah.
They ran it back. It wasn't just that you printed this and then you could play 4 copies and it was in combo decks at the time. They put it in 6th edition.
Yeah.
They were like, no, I'll bet again. I'll double.
Yep. Bet.
Double it up.
Bet
it
Let's
again.
go.
I'll bet it again. And then guess what? Turns out that when you have 4 copies of Vampiric Tutor legal at the same time that you can play 4 copies of Dark Ritual
Mm-hmm.
and 4 copies of Yawgmoth's Will,
Mm-hmm.
4 copies of Yawgmoth's Will,
Mm-hmm.
some things start to break down.
Oh. I don't know. Maybe that'll come up in one
We're
of our
getting
episodes.
close. We're only a couple of years away.
We are actually getting pretty close.
Turn 1 kills in standard. Turn 2 kills in standard. We're getting close.
I can't wait. I can't wait till we get to Saga Block. All right, everybody. That is it for trivia, notable cards, and all of that jazz, which means we got to get ready for the award show right after this. All right, everybody. It is time for your favorite part of the show. Our favorite part of the show is everybody's favorite part of the show. It's time for the award show here for Visions. We are, as always, going to start with the Oko Thief of Crowns award for the best card in the set. Do you remember what you picked?
I think it's Vampiric Tutor.
Good choice.
It's pretty messed up.
Real proud of
Go
you.
whatever you want for 1 mana at instant speed.
2 life.
Yeah. I do want to talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
There's an interesting thing going on here in the set. It's all over the place.
Okay.
So you have Vampiric Tutor, pay life.
Yep.
You have Karavek's Spite, discard your hand, lose everything.
Yep.
You have Fireblast, sack 2 lands. You have Squander Resources.
Yeah.
So something that all these cards have in common is
You have to sacrifice some resources.
there's no drawback if you're just killing your opponent.
Okay, that's also true.
And
That's also true.
at least Vampiric Tutor, there's like some separation there. But a lot of these cards just deal damage. It's the easiest way to subvert the drawback.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
It's a little like there's a weird amount of it in this set. It's not a normal amount.
That's fair. That's fair.
But anyway, Vampiric Tutor is just completely cracked at the end.
My selection was Natural Order. First mention of that card. That, of course, is 2 GG. Sacrifice a green creature, put a green creature directly into play, most notably comboing with elves to go get a Crater Hoof Behemoth to kill the opponent. Just a really powerful card.
Yeah.
Just really powerful. That's all.
Super flexible, really fun.
Yeah.
Pretty much started getting played very quickly after the set came out just because of Verdant Force. And the green creatures have certainly got better since then.
Maybe just a scotch. We're going to move on to the Carnival of Souls Award for the worst card in the set. My selection was Time and Tide. For those of you unaware, Time and Tide. Yeah. Blue, instant. All creatures that are phased out phase in, and all creatures with phasing phase out. For those of you with your phasing deck, all 2 of you.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
Because I just can't imagine a phasing deck.
I did not run into many phasing decks in the wild.
Do you remember your answer?
I believe it was like Topic Golem.
That is correct.
So, okay, if I'm in a 3/3, already kind of out to a rough start, pay 1 to regenerate and put a -1/-1 counter on it. So that's really bad. And then also something that you don't appreciate about the card until you have it in play is the 3rd time you regenerate it, it just kills it.
It kills itself. Yeah.
So you only get 2 cracks at it.
That's right.
Because it regenerates into the 0/0.
Unless you can get these counters off of it somehow.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. But yeah, not a lot here.
The Doomblade Award for best non-rare in the set. Your answer.
So I'm not saying this is the most powerful rare, or non-rare, sorry. But I'm trying to answer the question how I interpret the spirit of the question.
This card still sees play.
Workman-like,
yeah,
straightforward, nuts and boltsy. Gonna give it to Impulse.
Okay.
Just very popular card. You know, the play pattern of leave mana up and then smooth out in Impulse if you don't do anything. Very common. Showed up in combo decks. Showed up in just kind of generic control decks, but not at a rate that's overwhelming. I think you can do Impulse, and it's not the biggest risk out there, and it's a really attractive card.
And iconic artwork.
Yes.
I will say that. I have a lot of options here. This is less than the spirit of the award. So options include River Boa, Creeping Mold, Fireblast, Necromancy, Mana War, Summer Bloom, Goblin Recruiter.
Yeah, like some of those are just rares. I don't care what rarity they are. They don't count.
Goblin Recruiter, somehow not a rare.
Yeah.
Summer Bloom, probably would be a rare now.
For sure.
Yeah, would be a rare now. So I'm also going to go with the spirit of the award. And because this card has not been mentioned enough yet this episode, River Boa. 2 mana, 2/1, Island Walk, pay a green, regenerate. I loved this card when I was young.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And when this card got like outmodded, it's kind of sad. Whatever, that's just like, it's not anything now. And also, they just don't really print cards for the regenerate anymore either. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, regenerate doesn't play that well.
Yeah, and I get it. But River Boa, young Cedric liked that card a lot. And like when I was getting in a competitive play, I'm like, yo, this card's nice.
Yes.
This card is nice. Blue decks can't beat this. They have all the busted cards, but they can't handle this thing. This thing is nice.
Yeah, it's a well-crafted thing because there's this, it does look like kind of a random collection of stuff, but it's like, oh, against some people can't be blocked. And against other people, it's a really good blocker.
Yeah.
So you kind of get the sense of like, oh, how could this ever be bad? This also inspired a quote in one of my previous game design jobs many years ago. You know me, I'm more of a top-down designer, top-down meaning start with the story and the flavor and try to fill out the mechanics. But, at the end of the day, you're also making a game. It's an abstraction. You have to kind of like do what's best for the game engine, the rules, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone was complaining about, oh, this like design doesn't make sense, it's not flavorful enough, whatever, the response was Bone Splitter on River Boa. You just put an axe on your snake. Yeah, how's swinging that thing around? It's like, it is not worth writing on River Boa cannot be equipped. So you just
that's not happening.
At some point, you just gotta accept that you're making a game. You're gonna have to take some liberties. But yeah, Bone Splitter on River Boa was a turn of phrase.
It's more fun, the idea of River Boa carrying a Bone Splitter. It's actually more fun. Or like a Loxodon Warhammer.
Right.
I don't know how it's beating me to death with this thing, but it is.
Yeah. I mean, River Boa is just the perfect one, too, because mechanically you do want to put equipment on it because it's a regenerator with Island Walk.
Yeah.
But it's also the funniest animal to give a weapon to because it has no chance of carrying something.
Give it that Leonid Scribitar. All right, Aboro Palace in the Clouds Award for fun of one of in the set. My answer is Mana War, mostly because I believe young Cedric used to play 1 Mana War in his Allurin deck.
Yeah.
As part of the combo to go off. So, like part of the combo to go off, sort of, but also just like a thing you can naturally draw that was good. So my answer is Mana War. Do you remember your answer?
Karavek Spite.
That is correct.
It's a funny story about this one. So there was a bunch of aggressive black decks that play with Demonic Consultation. They played 1 copy of this.
Okay.
You don't want to draw it, but it's a nice emergency thing to have. So Demonic Consultation for Karavek Spite is really funny because like 10% of the time you just lose the game on the spot via decking, but it only comes up if you were going to lose anyway.
Sure.
So great. Couple great plays also in early Grand Prix Pro Tour history occurred via Karavek Spite.
Okay.
One is someone was playing for top 8 of a Grand Prix or something and had 6 mana or whatever, and they're like, tap 3 Karavek Spite, so you have to sack everything.
Okay.
And the opponent goes, okay, disrupt. So that one really stings. It's too late. The other, I believe this was a play from Mike Long, who
The one and only.
notorious obviously for cheating, but also was a tremendous player. So back at this point, the way the rules worked was if you made mana during your upkeep, it wouldn't empty out until the end of your draw step.
Okay. Yep.
So he has a lot of mana, and he goes, okay, during my upkeep, float a 1,000,000 mana, Karavek Spite, because he knew the opponent could have memory lapse. So he would just get to draw it, have the mana, and be able to do it.
That's smart.
One of the sickest plays of all time.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing about Mike Long. He was really good. But that when I heard about that play, I was like, I will never be a good Pro Tour player. I would have never thought that in a million years.
He was really good and need that little extra edge.
That little extra something.
That's right.
But most people in that spot would just draw for their turn and then do whatever, right?
Yeah.
But he, knew the rules well enough and how memory lapse worked to be able to pull that off.
Next up, Mystic Confluence Award for the best vintage cube card in the set. Well, there's really only 2 answers. I am going to go with Vampiric Tutor because I don't really draft green in the cube. Mm-hmm. So you can
give it a natural order, right. Whatever. Just, it's good. It's good a lot of the time. I've seen it be good.
It's the only options. Smothering Tide Award for best commander card in the cube. I went to EDH Rec and I was informed that Vampiric Tutor sees a lot of play in commander, which, that makes a lot of sense. See, because you only get to play.
So it's a format. So my understanding is a format where you only play 1 copy of cards.
That is correct.
So tutoring seems to be pretty antithetical to the spirit of it.
You have got a hold on the format. And
maybe it would be one thing if the rate was low enough that you had to like really mean it to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you can only tutor for an enchantment, so you got to build like an enchantment deck. This card being number 1 in the EDH Rec is an indictment of the people who play Commander.
Well, okay, here's what I'm going to do for you.
Okay.
I can sense a little frustration.
There's no frustration. It's a good reveal.
So I've gone to Visions to see the next most played card per EDH Rec is Relentless Assault.
Awesome.
Way more in the spirit of Commander, in my opinion.
My answer, I'm not looking up EDH Rec. It's the spirit of multiplayer. I'm giving it to City of Solitude.
Okay.
It's a multiplayer card. It's a card that speaks to a multiplayer experience.
Yeah, you're right.
Vampiric Tutor.
Well, I just go by the numbers.
Unbelievable.
I go by the numbers sometimes.
What a terrible card to have be number 1.
Speaking of terrible cards to win an award, Pack Rat Award for best limited card in the set. My selection is Gossamer Chains.
Yeah.
Which doesn't even seem remotely fun to play against. For those of you not in the know, my friend that I grew up with, old JC, John Cross, showed me this one. White, enchantment. Return Gossamer Chains to owner's hand. Target unblocked creature deals no combat damage this turn. So, cool. Nice dragon.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I have a blocker and this, so you can't attack for the rest of the game.
Pretty much. Seems like it's horrible to play against.
Does not look good.
Your selection, a much simpler card.
I don't remember.
Necrotal.
Oh yeah, Necrotal. Cool. They had a thing, now they don't. I got a 2/1 first strike. Back then you paid 4 mana for that. No questions asked.
Yeah.
You got a removal spell on top of it, even better.
2/1 first strike is pretty good too.
Yeah, they're not touching that.
Yeah. We're going to go on to the Char Rumbler Award for weirdest card in the set. Do you remember your answer?
My answer is Teferi's Puzzle Box.
Okay.
It does make the game bizarrely unplayable. There is some cool stuff you can do with it. I'm not trying to discount it, but it is bizarre and really intense. It's an intense experience. It is on top of the game when it is in play.
I have selected Elkin Lair. I believe this is my first world enchantment I've selected on the show in a meaningful way. During each, this costs 4 mana, 3 in a red. During each player's upkeep, that player chooses a card at random from his or her hand and sets it aside face up. That player may play that card as though it were in his or her hand. If the player does not play the card by end of turn, bury that card. By the way, you have to pay the mana cost of that card.
Yeah, this is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
It is true.
Enchant World.
It is true, yeah.
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
Is that a serious question?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
And of course, given that it is a red crazy card, it also has really weird art. Because that's what happens with all of these cards. We're going to go on to the blank award for the best card name in the set. We have the same answer, which is
Undiscovered Paradise.
What a banger. What a banger. I'd like it if that card saw more play and stuff. I think it's a really cool card.
Yeah, I know that it was very popular in pre-modern for a little while when land tax was legal. You figure that one out.
That's smart.
But fortunately, they finally realized that card should be banned.
Okay.
So I don't know if it gets played as much anymore.
Okay. We have we have the John Avon Award for best land artwork in the set. We have the same answer once again.
Griffin Canyon.
Yep.
Love the artwork on this. This is also a very near and dear to me, as one of my children is named Griffin, and he has started to become interested in collecting Magic cards. And I gave him Griffin Canyon as his first card, which he just loves.
Is Griffin's name Griffin because of the canyon?
No, it is not.
Well,
It's also not because of Blake Griffin. I've been asked that too.
I didn't even connect that dot.
Yeah.
I
No,
would
it's
never
not.
put you. I would put you on the canyon before Blake.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's neither.
Okay.
Okay. But love the art on Griffin Canyon, and there's a new sentimental attachment to it as well.
We're going to go to the Aurelius Fury Award for most overhyped card during previous season. I was not there, so I don't have an answer, but you do.
Well, I think there's two reasonable answers.
Okay.
Relentless Assault was like $15 and is awful.
Yep.
The other one was Creeping Mold. People talked about Creeping Mold like, 4 copies in every green deck, no questions asked.
I remember. I experienced this growing up.
Yeah, and you're paying a lot for flexibility, which is usually not what competitive Magic is about. Creeping Mold was a fine card. It showed up in decks, ramp decks, 1 copy in the sideboard, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people thought that this was the green counterspell. You would just play 4 copies in every single green deck, and didn't really go that way.
The reason I mostly remember Creeping Mold is because when it got reprinted in Mirrodin, people were like, Creeping Mold's back.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And it's like, it just saw play everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
You have a Creeping Mold in your hand while your opponent's moving a Skull Clamp around for the 4th time.
Well, I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, both teams played hard.
Yeah.
You know the drill.
I got Look, man, it's a little Creeping Mold and a Molder Slug. We're gonna whittle those artifacts down eventually.
Yeah.
I'll show you. And then we have the Tarmogoyf Award for most underhyped card during previous season. Do you remember your answer? It's a rainbow.
Oh, Rainbow Ifrit.
Yeah.
Yeah, people didn't realize this one. So, the thing about phasing that makes it not good sometimes is that it's mandatory.
Okay.
The option to phase something out is actually quite good.
Yes.
And so there was a little bit of confusion there initially, but this eventually became a staple of a variety of blue control decks because it's just not very easy to kill if your opponent's got a bunch of mana.
Yep.
And it very slowly but surely whittles the game down.
I think this is how Randy Bueller won his mono blue deck. Is that?
It was like 1 copy of this and 4 Stalking Stones.
Yeah. And then just a whole lot of counter spells. And I think Whisper of the Muse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was rough. Really rough.
Depends on who you are. It's not for me. I'll tell you that much. All right. We have gone through all of our awards, which means we have one thing left to do. All righty, partner. Let's close her down. What card won Visions and why?
Octavia Orangutan.
Okay.
Very fun, straightforward, appealing card. expand screens, colored pie space, and a way that I think is pretty positive and is representative of what is the best element of Visions, I think, which is just a lot of really good nuts and bolts, mostly creatures, cards that you can just put in the deck, play a more interactive game that are fun and appealing and promote good stuff. And the enters the battlefield creature array is, it really starts here. There's a lot of it, and it's quite good for the time. And Magic has done nothing but add to it since.
My answer is Mana War for a lot of the reasons that you have, which is basically this is where ETB creatures really started to shine, which is really cool because it's a huge part of the game now. And I think people are generally excited about creatures that have enter the battlefield abilities, be it Mana War and Uktabi Orangutan back in the day. I'm thinking of the last standard format that had like Corpse Appraiser or like Blood Tithe Harvester, enters the battlefield, makes a treasure, and just, a lot of creatures nowadays. It's kind of unfortunate to say, but if they don't enter the battlefield and if they don't have an enters the battlefield trigger, then they have to be like really good, which means that maybe they've overdone the ETB stuff a little bit or have made it too powerful. But maybe this was just always the direction Magic was going to go in.
Well, or the creature could be super cheap.
Sure.
Yeah, they're down mana or down cards interacting with it. It has to be one or the other. Yeah. But Blood Tithe Harvester to me is like, I want to call it the contrast of that is a card with an enters the battlefield trigger, but that's also an extremely complicated game piece on the table for both players.
Sure.
Whereas these just such a clean, straightforward execution, real belief in the concept to just say, no, we're not even going to put trample on Uktabi Orangutan. It's just going to be a 2/2 blank. Really only Necrotal is touching that. Yeah. That discipline is really, really great for the reasons I talked about earlier on the show.
All right. We're going to give this set a grade. I am going to give Visions a 5. There are some nice things going on here, but there's also nothing that stands out to me in a way that is just like, oh, wow, this is super, super, super good. I am a big fan, mostly because I grew up with this, of the big base set into small set. And so for this being one of the small sets after the big set of Mirage, pretty cool. I grew up with that structure of Magic, as I did mention. And, this is kind of I don't want to say it's like an innocuous small set, but there's nothing really that stands out here to me of just like, oh, they like crushed this or did this. Like the ETB creature is cool. There's nothing horribly offensive either. I think the most powerful card in this set objectively is Vampiric Tutor. That card's really good. But I don't want to say that Visions is a throwaway set. It just feels like it's just kind of average. Doesn't do anything offensive like we've seen with a lot of the sets that we covered leading up into this point, but it doesn't feel like it does anything great because it feels like the folks at Wizards are kind of getting their footing on how to do big set, small set.
Yeah, it is just kind of a extension of Mirage.
Yeah.
If you scrub the set symbols off of them, you would not really be able to tell which was in which set.
Sure. Okay.
I give Visions a 6.
Okay.
I remember loving this set when it came out.
Okay.
And I was sort of in that arc of, I was starting to go to the tournaments. I sort of had a sense of what was powerful, and Visions has a lot of just nuts and bolts cards you can put in your deck. It's easy to point to Vampiric Tutor and Fireblast, but, the Riverbow, Uktabi Orangutan, Mana War, Longbow Archers, just like useful cards that play pretty well and just put in your deck and they're good. There's a lot of that going on here, which is excellent. I have one really big critique and then one smaller one.
Okay.
The big one is just you got to give me something. Like this is just Mirage Part 2.
Okay.
And because Mirage is in this place where you can't expand on the mechanics in a meaningful way because they're not built around it, they're just basically costing mechanisms, or with the case of flanking, just something that modifies combat. You can't say, oh, this is how we're going to do a new twist on flanking, cumulative upkeep.
Sure.
Mechanics don't work that way. So you got to come up with something new. Could be small, but you got to give me a little something to work with here. And then too many powerful cards that are extreme negative costing, and the punchline is it kills your opponent.
Sure.
Those cards don't play well in the first place, and if you're going to do it, do one and really believe in it. But the squandered resources Caravex by Fireblast array of designs, I think is pretty rough.
Yeah, fair enough.
And this is also coming off of on the heels of Mirage, which had Final Fortune, which is the same thing again. Which is like,
Right.
if this kills you, then the drawback doesn't matter.
Sure.
And this is about killing you. So
Sure.
there you go. So they're hitting that note a few too many times here, but that's secondary as far as the critique goes versus you got to give me something new if the mechanics are not conducive to, and here's the new twist on XYZ.
Fair enough. A 5 and a 6, everybody. That's where we stand on Visions. And we now turn our attention to our big scoreboard, where you will see what we've given all the previous sets that we've done. So Alpha Beta Unlimited, Legends, The Dark, Ice Age Chronicles, Mirage, which I gave a 7, you gave an 8, and then Visions, as I mentioned, I gave a 5 and you gave a 6. So what's next here on the Resleevables? Well, a whole bunch of things. First and foremost, we would love if you were to subscribe to us on YouTube, as we're trying to get this channel to over 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year. You can find our most recent set reviews on the Resleevables normal edition, if you will. Let's see. This is, of course, Visions. We've done Mirage. We've done Alliances. We're going to be doing the completion of this block very soon, along with 5th edition as well, where your jump artwork, I believe, is.
Oh yeah,
the zebra. Is it flight or jump?
I think it's flight.
It's the zebra.
Yeah, because it's
the
like
zebra.
levitating. The 5th edition, I don't want to spoil too much, but the 5th edition art is going to throw you for a loop.
I'm prepared to be thrown for said loop.
Yeah.
You can, of course, on our YouTube page, check out stuff like the Resleevables and now the Resleevables Tournament Edition, because our video of you and I recapping and then playing the 1994 Magic the Gathering World Championships is out there.
So much fun.
Had an absolute blast getting stasis locked by you. Thank you so much for that. We'll never forget. Old episodes of the pre-sleevables are over there, and of course, snippets of our Unsleeved podcast as well. Now, of course, if you do want full episodes of the Unsleeved podcast, be sure to subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/Resleevables, where not only will you get full episodes of the Unsleeved podcast that we do 3 times a month, but also you will get early releases of episodes of the Resleevables and the Resleevables Tournament Edition, just like this one here. You can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/theresleevables if you'd like to hang out with us on that medium and find out more in a more direct way of basically when things are coming out and what's coming out, because we're going to be doing some more cool stuff next year. And we have to shout out our sponsor, because I know where Eternal lives. And I think everybody wants to know too.
Here, which means there.
Yes.
Over at Tales of Adventure, TOAmagic.com, and TOA Michael on Twitter.
So what's next here on this YouTube channel and Patreon? Well, one, 5th edition.
Oh, wow.
Yep, coming up, along with Weatherlight. So we're going to get through those very soon. We are going to be doing the 1995 Magic the Gathering World Championships and Pro Tour Chicago for the Resleevables Tournament Edition.
Lovely. And a last little thing.
Yeah, hit me.
We don't want to forget, we also do our Cracker Packs.
Yes, thank you.
And
Thank
if you
you.
subscribe after every show we do a Cracker Pack where we open one booster and make a video out of it, and also send a booster to one of our Patreons at the $10 or $25 level. Just a random drawing. It doesn't matter how long you've been, whatever. Just one person gets it. And so we've got these 2 boosters here of Visions. One will be opening up shortly and posting that pack opening. And then someone in the $10 or $25 tier will be sent this. So if you're interested in being one of those people, potentially, make sure to be subscribed over the Patreon at the $10 or $25 level.
Well done. Thank you, partner. So, Cracker Packs coming soon. Also live on the YouTube page. Cracker Pack for Visions coming very soon. And then 5th edition Pro Tour Chicago as part of the Resleevables Tournament Edition, and a whole bunch more. So, that's it, and that's all. Visions in the books. Not a bad little set.
Not a bad little set. And you better subscribe, because I'm starting to look into the future with some of these pack purchases.
I've seen.
And those Urza Saga boosters. So
yeah.
we're gonna need some support out there.
Not cheap.
So
Let's just
thanks
say
as always,
not cheap.
everyone. It was really great. And yeah, stay tuned. We got, more gameplay, unboxing, pack opening, and set reviews coming up in the very near future.
See you soon. Boom. Break.
Yeah, my favorite mechanics in Weatherlight are the mandatory fun mechanics, which is this creature is like overstated and does something good,
Okay.
but you have to do the good thing or else it dies.
Oh.
So like green, 1 gray, 1 colorless, 3/2.
Okay.
ETB, return a land from your graveyard to your hand, or it dies.
I did not know about this.
Harvest Worm. There's a few
Oh,
others.
I remember that card.
There's a few others like that.
Yeah, I remember
They're
that
just
card.
like a sick deal, and they're balanced around that they just die if you can't do the thing. No, 26, nailed it. Got it all.
And they lost the game too. Yep. You got every bit of that one.
Every bit of it.
Well done. Well done.
You know me, I don't bet NBA spreads very often.
Me
It's like,
either.
I saw Pistons by a screen. Like, I don't care if they're playing against Michigan State. I
mean,
whatever the others are.
I was gonna say someone has to be favored. That's not true. They could have just made it a pick 'em.